Content Chapter 10. Attention B2B companies, this island the chapter you are looking for. Whenever we give presentations or keynote addresses, there's always someone who raises a hand and asks, wait a second. How does this apply to B2B? So we're anticipating that there are a number of you B2B business owners or marketers reading this book now, who might be formulating the very same question in your own heads right now. Here's the thing, everything covered in this book applies to businesses that sell to other businesses or to any other kind of organization out there. For that matter, whether you sell routers, HVAC systems, swimming pools, or ice cubes, or are charged with marketing your synagogue, swing band, accounting services, hospital, zoo, oil paintings, candidate for school committee, Pop Warner Football League, pizza shop, or PTA group. In other words, the content rules that make for good content apply broadly, which means they apply to you, too. That said, we know that organizations selling to other businesses face some unique challenges. So we are dedicating this chapter to creating content in the B2B world, condensing the lessons elsewhere in the book and packaging them specifically for you. For help, we turn to our friend here in Boston, Stephanie Tilton of 10 Ton Marketing, who works extensively with B2B companies to develop their own brands of killer content. What follows is Stephanie's account of how to create B2B content that ignites. Here's what you 11 find in these pages: a brief overview of the specific trends compelling B2B organizations to adopt content marketing, a concise overview of content and what it can do for your B2B organization, 7 steps you can take to develop a solid B2B focused content strategy your prospects are avoiding you. Prospective B2B customers spend significant time researching their options before making a purchase. B2B companies know this better than anyone. Of course. What's more, you are typically not dealing with just one person in the organization, you're dealing with a committee of buyers. After all, your service or product will likely be used across many areas of the company. That means that each person with influence over the purchase decision typically wants to research, evaluate, or vet the alternatives. Most of these buyers turn to the web to access information, whether to solicit opinions from peers through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or other social venues, or to sift through content on your site and others. This affects B2B companies in interesting ways, because your prospects are making decisions based on these online interactions and their own research. They can avoid contacting your company until they are closer to actually making a purchase, or quite late in buying cycle. And who can blame them? We all know we'll get inundated harassed with emails and phone calls the minute we raise our hand and say we're in the market to buy. That said, according to an IDG Communications survey of the professionals conducted in December 2008, a majority of the time, buyers aren't finding the information they need while researching their options. And if your company isn't delivering relevant information, it's not going to make the short list of possible vendors. The flip side, of course, is that your company can win big time by offering up the information your prospects are seeking. In fact, in a survey conducted by Demand General and Genius.com, 66% of respondents indicated the consistent and relevant communication provided by both the sales and marketing organizations was a key influence in choosing the company they ultimately made a purchase from. Marketers need to pick up the ball and run with it. So what does this mean for your business? First and foremost, there's a lot more pressure on you to produce valuable content that replaces the interactions your salespeople used to have with prospects throughout the so-called buying cycle, or the length of time it takes someone to make a decision to purchase. In the B2B world, of course, the decision period can be many months, or considerably longer than it might be to choose a flavor of ice cream from the freezer case. In fact, according to Forrester research, long sales cycles and complex purchase decision-making challenge B2B marketers to find the most qualified prospects and to build relationships long before the first sales call. As a result, you need to embrace a new mindset, one focused not just on generating leads but on developing a strategy to keep prospects engaged until they're good and ready to talk to your sales reps. Content marketing is the key. This is where content comes in. If you can deliver content that your prospects find interesting and informative and entertaining, they'll see you as a trusted source of information and advisor, an enviable position for any organization. Let's say your prospects see your solution and your competitor's solution stacking up fairly evenly. If you provide the information that answers your prospects' questions and concerns, and engage them throughout the decision period, and your competitor doesn't, you've increased the likelihood of winning the deal. Let's face it, while many companies strive to be thought leaders, the truth is that only a handful can do it well. But the beauty of content marketing is that any company of any size can excel at it and set itself apart. Additional steps to getting hitched: content and B2B, true love always. The content rules and the fundamentals of developing great content we talked about in chapters 3 through 6 of this book. The why, who, what, when, how, and where still apply, but with some notable additions we outline here. Why? Clarifying objectives for B2B content. It is critical to measure the results of your efforts. You know someone is going to be asking for the reports. Besides, you want to know which content is and isn't working so you can prioritize going forward. For B2B companies, the job of each piece of content is more nuanced. Each piece of content you produce should be tied to a short-term goal, such as encouraging the reader to sign up for the XYZ webinar. Plus, it should be associated with your company's strategic objectives, such as increasing sales by 15% in North America. With clear objectives, you can understand how well you're hitting your mark. If the objective of one white paper was to move prospects from general awareness to more specific interest, how well did you do? And if your overall objective was to produce 400 sales-ready leads within 6 months, how did you fare? Once you have this insight, you can strengthen your content marketing efforts, putting into play what has worked to date and leaving lackluster content by the wayside. Who? Understanding the nuances of your B2B audience. Who is your audience? What are their issues? You can't deliver relevant, valuable content unless you understand what makes them tick and can fully grok their concerns and objectives. See Chapter 3. That's easy enough for most organizations to figure out, but B2B organizations often have a more difficult time of it. The problem is that many B2B organizations paint portraits of their prospects in broad brushstrokes, and as a result, they fail to paint a clear picture of just who it is the company is trying to reach and engage. While you may think titles and roles are sufficient for targeting your content, they're not. Here are 2 examples of why this approach is flawed. Take a look at Table 10.1 from a 2010 Forrester Research survey. You might be tempted to lump the titles of application developer and enterprise architect in the same category of those responsible for developing enterprise applications. But by assuming these 2 variations on an application developer fit into the same tidy box, you wouldn't understand the best channel for reaching either of these distinct roles. After all, they consult resources in different ways during their decision-making process. Table 10.1. In other words, you can't assume people with similar titles approach the buying process in the same way. Table page 145. Here's another example. Many organizations tend to think that all Chief Information Officer CIOs are created equal. But findings from CIO magazine's State of the CIO 2009 research report illustrate otherwise. The report summarizes 3 CIO archetypes, each with very different focuses and goals. See Table 10.2. If you assume all CIOs are alike, you're going to produce content that isn't relevant to any of them. Table page 145. To connect with your would-be buyers, you need to understand who they are, what they care about, what makes them tick, and what's the best way to bond with them. You do that by developing buyer personas profiles of the ideal customer based on what you know of your current customer base and prospects. While you don't need personas for every single person you sell to, you should develop buyer personas for all major roles involved in the buying process. For example, develop personas for the individual who will use the product or service, the one who will implement or manage it, and the one who will write the check. For each role, learn as much as you can about how that person goes about making a buying decision. What is this person's role in the purchase process? What questions does this person need answered at each stage of the buying process? Here are some additional questions you should try to answer. What work issues keep this person up at night? What motivates this buyer to take action? What sources does this person turn to for information and daily news? How does the prospect go about making business decisions? What types of organizations does he or she belong to, and what events does she attend? Does this buyer seek advice from colleagues, industry peers, and/or unbiased third parties? How is this person dealing with the problem today? What specific words or phrases does he or she use to describe the issues he or she is facing? What might prevent this type of buyer from choosing your company or offering? What are this prospect's content preferences throughout the buying cycle? To gather this information, consult your customer database and customer-facing folks, conduct polls and surveys of your customer base, and monitor the online conversations where your customers are, such as on Twitter, blogs, Facebook, private discussion groups, or LinkedIn groups. You can supplement this data with industry research that tells you a bit about general trends in particular industries. Map what you know to how they buy. Once you've gotten to know your audience, you need to understand the steps they take on the way to making a purchase decision. You can map out the buying process at a very basic or more complex level. The key is to understand how your prospects and customers think of the buying cycle, who is involved, and what their information needs are at each stage. Next, you can create a grid or spreadsheet that maps the questions and concerns of each buyer at each stage of the buying process. Map these information needs to the content formats your prospects prefer. You should have uncovered these preferences for content as part of developing your buyer personas. But if you need some outside assistance and you happen to sell a technology service or product, you can tap into outside research conducted by the likes of TechTarget and the Information Week Business Technology Network, to name 2. While you work on nurturing new customers and forging new relationships, be sure not to neglect your existing customers. See Table 10.3. Be sure to create content that helps deepen the relationships you've already built with customers. Your current customers have different needs from your prospects. If nothing else, they want to understand how to get the most out of the products or services they're already using. See other ideas in the loyalty column on the far right of Table 10.3. Table 10.3. Map out your prospects and customers' information needs and content preferences. Table page 150. Now you're ready to begin creating, or finding, or reimagining content to fit the specific needs of buyers at certain stages. A good place to start is to conduct an audit to see which of your current content you can reimagine in various formats and on various platforms. See Chapter 5. What's special about the B2B editorial calendar? In addition to producing relevant information, the next most important thing you can do is provide it consistently, at every stage outlined earlier. Keep in mind that your content is largely taking the place of the interactions your sales reps would otherwise be having with prospects. Because of that, it's critical for B2B companies that each piece of content be considered not as an ad hoc exercise, but as an element of a larger whole. Follow the ideas presented in Chapter 5, and create an editorial calendar with major milestones for creating and delivering content. And develop a production schedule for the project team to follow for each individual project. The beauty of this approach is that you avoid fire drill mode, and instead develop efficient processes for continually pumping out content of interest to your prospects and customers. Also critical is to include a call to action that points buyers to the next logical piece of content. In other words, your call to action should guide the prospect further along the decision process. And ideally, each content asset or reimagined set of content you offer will be associated with a unique landing page. This helps prospects find exactly the information they're interested in. How? Craft interesting, informative, entertaining content. Yes, you can. Much of this book is about how to do just that. But for B2B companies, special attention must be paid to content rule number 8: do something unexpected. There are lots of examples in this book of companies that sell dead serious products, that nonetheless have figured out a way to market them in a way that both drives viral sharing and enhances the company's personality. Using a little humor or entertainment is also a great way to drive awareness about invisible services or products that exist in the background of business infrastructure, say, technology products or security services. Check out Ideas from Kinaxis Chapter 5, Exact Target Chapter 4, or Kadian Chapter 23. See Figure 10, 1. Figure 10.1. Kadian produces humorous videos to connect with its audience. Page 152. Figure. Or perhaps you have the resources and initiative to produce something like the witty interactive game and quiz from Marketo. See Figure 10.2. Figure 10.2. Marketo created an interactive game to build relationships with qualified prospects. Page 153. Picture. Or consider Cisco's campaign for its ASR 1000. Rather than soliciting real-life customer testimonials about how Cisco equipment helps them meet their technical challenges, which would likely be stuff full of language detail like the buzzwords that appear in our list in Chapter 4, Cisco sought testimonials from the likes of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, talking about how dependent they are on the network. Can you imagine what would happen if Santa had reliability issues on Christmas Eve? Christmas would be doomed. In other words, Cisco was able to drive home the same point, but to do so in a funny, intriguing way. How might your company develop its messaging to add an element of the unexpected? 4 content ideas you shouldn't miss. Competitive comparisons. Create a downloadable document that offers a feature comparison of your product to your competitors, or reviews pricing details. TechTarget's 2009 Media Consumption Report revealed that a majority of technology buyers want content comparing a vendor's offering to the competition as they get further along in the decision process. Yet few companies put out competitive comparisons for public consumption. Don't forget, this is information your sales reps would have handed over during meetings with prospects in the past. Now that buyers are delaying interactions until the last possible minute, you need to deliver this information online. If you don't offer it but your competitors do, guess who will make the short list of potential vendors? Consider the approach of one Vancouver-based company. Ritchie Wiki is a collaborative website created and maintained by Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers as the go-to source for industrial equipment specs and everything else anyone could ever want to know about heavy machinery and the manufacturers, people, uses, projects, and history of it. Did you know that the Caterpillar 5358 seater, one of about 900 made in the United States, produces 180 net horsepower? Ritchie Brothers curates information for its industry in a central, accessible source. How might you be a go-to resource for those in your industry, including your would-be customers? A more nuanced approach to case stories or success stories. Use case studies or customer success stories for more than just demonstrating the value of your solution. Rather, position them to overcome objections early in the buying cycle. First, you need to understand why your customers were initially skeptical of your offering. Let's assume your company is DocsRS and sells document management software. Perhaps during interviews, you discover that many of your customers were initially hesitant because your solution is offered through a software-as-a-service SaaS model. Companies were concerned that users without internet connections would be unable to access electronic files, a fear reinforced by their talks with other SaaS providers. If enough of your customers share this concern, you've got good reason to try to preempt the objection before it scares off other potential customers. Find out what turned these current customers' views around. In this case, let's assume it's because you enabled users to access files while offline. Then present a story that highlights one customer's concern with this issue and why your offering ultimately won that customer over. Instead of producing a case study entitled DocsRS helps XYZ Corporation locate records in half the time, you could publish one entitled Assessing Your Document Management Options, Why All Software-as-a-Service Offerings Are Not Equal. You can also use success stories to address the needs of different stakeholders in the buying process. Scott Vaughn of UMB Tech Web polled a group of CIOs about what marketers could do better. It turns out that the standard problem-solution results case study formula doesn't resonate with evaluators and decision-makers. One case study element the CIO said they'd like to see is a section in lessons learned while implementing the solution. Deliver that information and you'll stand head and shoulders above the competition. Reimagined content. Chapter 5 gives you a framework for reimagining your content assets in various formats and across various platforms. Bundling related products together in a downloadable, how-to toolkit is a great way to interest and engage your buyers. Marketing Profs packages various types of its content on the same theme into kits. A kit might include a how-to webinar, an assortment of tactical articles, worksheets or checklists, and a collection of customer success stories, for example. The kit itself is a product landing page that links to existing content in the Marketing Profs library. Frequently asked questions FAQs. Create a list of the common questions and answers that will allow your would-be buyers to find answers to their questions on their own. For details on how to create a compelling FAQ section, see Chapter 15. Producing the type of content your prospects and customers are looking for can be enough to set you apart. Remember, they're not finding the information they want a majority of the time. Where, spreading seeds. The more your information makes it into the hands of your prospects, the greater the likelihood that they'll ultimately get in touch with one of your sales reps, right? So make it easy to consume and share your content. If nothing else, Embed sharing options in your PDFs. See Figure 10.3. As we explain in Chapter 13, Galen D. Young of Price B2B wrote an article for Marketing Profs that details how his organization embedded email and social media sharing options in an ebook on B2B email marketing best practices. Using web analytics and data available from Bit1Y URL shortener, he's been able to track and analyze the traffic from various referral sources. And Galen is certain that the PDF is getting shared much more than it would have had they not embedded sharing options. Figure 10.3 Embed options to facilitate sharing. Page 157. To register or not to register. Next, you should rethink registration for more. See Chapter 13. Requiring prospects to register in exchange for your content should be a strategic decision, not a default option. If you do require registration, limit the amount of information you request. Don't ask for all the information under the sun. Instead, think of your relationship with the prospect like a dating scenario, and ask for a little bit of information during each successive interaction. Say a prospect's first interaction with you is to download a white paper, ebook, or how-to guide from your website. You might request the person's name and email address in exchange for the download. You could then send an email asking if she would like to receive useful information from time to time. In other words, see if she'll grant permission to be added to your database. At the end of the paper, ebook, or guide, your call to action could point her to another asset in your library, whatever makes sense, for moving her through the buying process in a logical sequence. Let's assume that you encourage her to sign up for the next paper in a series. When she requests the download, you could ask for her company name and role. At the end of that paper, you could point her to a 1-hour webinar. When she signs up to attend the webinar, you could ask for her company size, time frame to purchase, and phone number or whatever makes sense for your company. The key is to ask for a bit more information with each contact so you can build the information up over time. That way you take the burden off the prospect while gathering the information you need. By using cookies, you can pre-populate your forms with the information you've captured to date. The prospect can see you're asking for just a bit of additional information with each interaction. Also, don't be shy about putting out a press release announcing your latest content. Press releases aren't just for product or company news, they're a way you can make it easier for your prospects to find your content. Finally, be sure to post your content on relevant online communities, blog about it, and link to it through Twitter and in your email signature. More about sharing options in Chapter 8. Talking B2B Contend with one of the world's largest software businesses. SaaS is not only the world's largest privately held software business, it has more than 1.000 employees in 50 countries and 400 SaaS offices worldwide, but it's also an innovator in using content to grow its $2.3 billion business. Headquartered near Raleigh, North Carolina, SaaS publishes an online magazine, white papers, blogs, and more to help advance its industry leadership, as well as draw customers to its products and services. Here, Kelly Lavoyer, Senior Manager of External Communications KL, and John Mosler, SaaS's Integrated Content Manager OM, talk about their approach. We particularly like how a company the size of SaaS defines compelling content, and how SaaS's approach is surprisingly similar to that of any smaller organization. See what Kelly says about an organization's voice in her answer. For example, developing content to attract and retain customers in your organization is very different from what I might be or a small organization. What defines compelling content in the B2B space? KL, I'm not so sure that the answer is very different from that of a small business. Actually, both current and prospective customers want content that helps them solve their problem, relevant to the buying stage that they are in, that is, whether they're early in the process researching vendors, or a long-time customer looking to use their SaaS software, in our case, in new ways. Of course, being able to deliver the content in a compelling way requires that you've done the research to identify the problems these audiences are faced with, and that you have solid processes for developing the content. The complexity of those processes might be what sets us apart from a smaller organization. But that aside, I think compelling content is timely, in that it reflects new thinking and responds to current issues. It's easy to consume, is offered in multiple media, offers practical information, and sounds like it was written by a real person. I believe the voice of an organization is one of the qualities that can differentiate it from competitors. After all, at the end of the day, people want to do business with people, even more so when you're talking about committing to a significant financial investment. Where does an organization like yours begin? KL, first of all, with more than 120 software products and more than 11,000 employees in 400 offices around the world, we have to set priorities so we can derive some concentrated impact. We typically set 3 to 5 global priority market areas, such as business analytics and risk management, and 8 to 10 priority industries that we concentrate our outbound efforts on. Our product marketing organization identifies the key issues or problems in those areas that our target audiences are facing. And from that point, content development happens in many different areas of the company, around the world. I think what's key to your question, though, is how do we use content to attract customers, which is part of the new paradigm of inbound marketing. That's where our thought leadership strategy comes in. We have dozens of subject matter experts around the world who share their knowledge with content in a variety of channels via SaaS blogs, e-newsletters, and magazines, as well as mainstream and social media. But they don't always necessarily talk about SaaS. What's more important is that they have thoughtful innovation, opinions, and predictions about that particular topic. By way of providing helpful information and contributing to the conversations, SaaS will likely be top of mind the next time one of those readers is seeking a software solution. Q. B2B organizations need to develop content that resonates at various stages of the buying cycle, right? For example, the content someone is looking for in the early consideration stage is different from what it might be down the line, when they are more committed and digging into more specific features. How do you know what will resonate with buyers at various points? JM, from the metrics that our marketers share with us, from focus groups that we conduct, and from external research. We try never to miss an opportunity to gather groups of customers together at our conferences to focus group test content strategies. We have a complex matrix of target audiences, a lengthy buying cycle, and an evolving digital landscape, so we are always refining our approach. Q. What are the challenges you face as a B2B company looking to purchase content across your organization? Has it made marketing's job easier or harder? KL. Honestly, the biggest challenge in my opinion is that we have so many ideas, and simply not enough cycles to act on them. Related to that is the demand now for companies to be more agile with their content, and that can be a challenge. The tech B2B market is a deep, wide, fast-moving. There are issues, discussions, and announcements every day that impact us directly, and that we could develop timely, compelling content around. One of the challenges with agility at a company this size is the review cycles, but in my tenure at SaaS, I've seen that improve. I think our foray into blogging, for example, has helped people realize that we have to move quickly and trust our experts more. Q. How do you actually produce what you produce? KL. We produce the majority of our content ourselves, including video, which comes from our high-end video facility at the corporate headquarters. Some comes from partnerships with media companies, analyst firms, and research organizations. We have content producers all over the company, if you consider the PowerPoint presentations, technical papers, marketing campaign assets, etc., that departments are constantly producing as part of their daily jobs. We consider all of that as fodder for content, including internal content that can be tweaked for external use as long as it meets a priority need. The challenges, as we mentioned earlier, are to channel all this content into the right stages of the buying or customer support cycle and identify and fill the gaps. My team of writers are great at what I call merchandising content, that is, starting with something a white paper or a webcast and repurposing that into a magazine article, a blog post, an interactive digital piece. Producing those shorter, more digital-friendly offshoot assets that we can promote easily via social media channels is a great way to see quickly what resonates with our audiences. Q. Does SaaS have employees dedicated to content? JM. In 2008, we created two positions that SaaS had never had before, a social media manager and the position that I ultimately assumed, the integrated comm manager. I report into our product marketing organization and focus on developing more disciplined processes that underlie our content development. KL. And in 2009, I also created a new position called editor, blogs and social content. Our blog program is growing so rapidly. It needed a dedicated program manager, and that's what she's been spending the majority of her time on. But the idea behind the social content part of the title is to create digital-friendly assets from our marketing content that can be easily shared in social media, and also to monitor the social media landscape and bring back to the team any trending topics that we should consider jumping into with new content. Ready to get started? A good place to begin is with the content checklist in part 4 of this book.